When is that one time that you had to turn to the dark side? One day, my daughter came back from school and ran into my arms like she was scared. I could feel her shaking, so I took her inside and made some French toast, which was her favorite food. I thought she just had a really bad day and missed being at home, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Once she calmed down, she told me, "Mommy, something happened today, and I think I'm supposed to tell you about it." An uneasy knot formed itself in my heart when she told me that the school counselor had called her into his office for a special game. He handed my daughter a stuffed unicorn and told her that this new game was very popular with the children, which made my daughter excited and eager to learn. Then the counselor made her point the unicorn between his legs and push on it repeatedly. My daughter told me how he made weird faces at times and then closed his eyes and leaned back towards the end. I was so horrified and felt a wave of nausea rush through my body, so I had to go to the bathroom and throw up. What kind of sick person would make a 7-year-old girl do this kind of thing? Not to mention he worked at a school, and it was me who willfully sent my daughter near his vicinity. I kept bouncing between blaming myself and wanting to burn the entire world. My husband was no longer with us, so it was up to me to stand up for my daughter. I don't know what made me approach the school administration before the police, but that's exactly what I did. And the school administration laughed at me, saying that my daughter was clearly playing a prank. They said they had heard other students make similar jokes about the school counselor, and said that parents should teach their kids not to lie. By the time I made it to the police station, the school had already called them and explained the situation. They thought I was a crazy mother who was trying to give merit to my daughter's filthy lie. I had looked straight into my daughter's eyes when she told me this story, so I knew she was telling the truth. But no one wanted to believe me, and I felt like I was in a nightmare. This is when I remembered something important and ran back home to open my jewelry safe. Inside there was a note that I hadn't looked at for a long time. You see, although I was currently a doctor, I had been a very inexperienced nurse at one point. And one time, a very stern-looking man with a lot of face tattoos walked into our hospital with a bullet wound. No other nurse wanted to treat him since he looked so scary, so they sent me. I convinced myself that everyone deserves treatment and cleaned his wounds with the utmost concentration. I even engaged him in conversation and joked about how he should stay away from bullets in the future. When it was all over, the guy thanked me and handed me a note with his phone number on it. He said, "If you ever need someone taken care of, I won't ask for any payment." I typed in that phone number, and to my surprise, it actually connected. I told him who I was, and he said, "I remember you." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought about hanging up. What I was about to do wasn't part of who I had become as a woman, mother, or doctor. But I also wasn't just that. I was a wounded mother, betrayed by an entire system that claimed to protect, but sheltered monsters with diplomas and easy smiles. "What happened?" he asked with a deep voice. "If you got this far, it wasn't for nothing." I tried to speak, but my voice failed. I took a deep breath and swallowed hard. "It's about my daughter," I began. And then, without hiding anything, without embellishments, without self-censorship, I told him everything, from beginning to end. I told him how she came home trembling, how I was preparing rabanadas thinking it was just a bad day, until the moment she held that innocent unicorn in her hands and told me what that damn counselor did to her. I told him about the school laughing in my face, about the police looking at me like I was crazy, and I told him about the emptiness I felt now. The bitter taste of seeing my daughter sleeping, clutching the toy as if the trauma had poisoned it. "Give me his full name," he said after a heavy silence, "and everything you know about him. Address, car, routine, everything." Are you sure? You didn't call out of doubt. You already made your choice. I'm not a police officer. I'm not a lawyer, but I guarantee he'll never touch another child again. It was then that I understood. I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. I wrote down what he asked for, got everything I knew about the bastard. Names, schedules, even the color of his car and where he went for morning walks. I sent everything by message. Minutes later, he replied with just, "Understood." Nothing more. I went back to my daughter's room. She slept with a peaceful face, as if her little body was trying to forget the most horrible day of her life. I sat on the floor and cried right there in silence. I felt dirty for having resorted to that, but at the same time, I felt alive. For the first time in days, I felt like I was doing something real. The next day, I woke up with my heart racing. I went to the kitchen, made coffee, but my hand was shaking so much I dropped the mug. I picked up my phone. No messages, no calls. Life outside continued normally. My daughter went to school, the other school, because I would never let her go back to that one. I kissed her before she left with her grandmother, and I was alone, with the weight of what was to come. It was only at the end of the afternoon that the phone rang. "It's done," said the voice on the other end. "What does that mean?" "It means he'll never look at any child again. Not with his eyes, not with his heart, if he even had one." The call ended there. My legs went weak. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. That was it. It had happened. But nothing appeared in the newspaper, no news on the radio, no headlines, just silence. I was afraid to ask more, afraid to discover the details. But part of me was at peace. The next day, the school principal called me. She said she deeply regretted the misunderstanding, that they were reevaluating the teaching staff, and that the counselor had requested leave for personal problems. I wanted to laugh, but I just said, "Now it's too late." I hung up, but the consequences began to emerge. The police came looking for me again. They said he had mysteriously disappeared, vanished from the map. No sign of him anywhere, no cameras, no card activity. He simply evaporated. They pretended it was a simple investigation, but I could feel in their eyes that they knew, and that they suspected me. There was no evidence, no fingerprints, no cameras, no witnesses, but they knew. I started sleeping poorly. I had nightmares with siren sounds, with the police knocking on my door, with my daughter looking at me scared. But at the same time, I also dreamed of him paying, crying, feeling fear, feeling what she felt. It was only days later that I received a last message from the number. "The debt has been paid. Now move forward." He wasn't the first, and from what I discovered, he wouldn't be the last. I deleted the message, deleted the number, burned the old note, and then I sat in my daughter's room, watching her play in silence. And in that moment, even knowing I had plunged into the shadows, for the first time, I didn't feel shame. I felt like I had saved her, that I did what no one else would do. And if someone dared to say it was wrong, I would stare back and ask, "What would you do if it were your daughter?" That question echoed in my head every day, on loop. It accompanied me while I washed dishes, while I drove to the hospital, while I treated patients who trusted me without even imagining what I had done, without knowing how far a mother can go for justice. And it wasn't just inside my head that things began to change. A week after the counselor's voluntary leave, the school sent an official letter to all parents, with generic apologies about procedures being reevaluated and recent concerns about professional conduct. They were trying to clean the school's image as if it were all just an administrative error. Pathetic. But children talk. My daughter came home at the end of that week saying that a little friend told her that the unicorn man had gone away because he was a bad man, and that other girls from other classes had also cried because of him. I felt my blood freeze. How many children had been hurt while the adults turned their faces away? I knew that what I did wouldn't erase what happened to my daughter. I knew she would still have nightmares, that maybe one day she would go to therapy and cry saying I should have protected her better. But I also knew that that monster wouldn't touch anyone else, that no other mother would have to hear what I heard. And that gave me strength to continue. However, like all temporary peace, this one also began to crack. One day, when I went to pick up my daughter at the new school, I saw a black car parked near the gate. 2 men inside. Tinted windows, but still, I noticed they were watching me. I pretended not to see, took my daughter by the hand and went home. That night, another nightmare. But this time, it was different. I dreamed I was being judged. Not in a courtroom. It was something more symbolic. I was in a white room, surrounded by faces without eyes, and a voice repeated, "Good done by wrong hands. Is it still sin?" I woke up sweating. I got up from bed and went to the window. The same black car was parked across the street, motionless. No sign of movement. I picked up my phone, took a photo, called the police disguising my voice so as not to alarm my daughter. They wrote down the license plate, said they would investigate. They never got back to me. 2 days later, I received a summons to give testimony. It was about the disappearance of the school counselor. They alleged he might have been a victim of retaliation or involvement in crime. The blood disappeared from my face. I had been cautious. Too cautious. I hadn't left traces, and the man who helped me was someone from the underworld, invisible to the system. But what if, at the police station, the room was cold? The detective, a woman with hard eyes, asked me direct questions. "Did you have any recent contact with the school counselor?" "No." "Any disagreement with him?" "Only what I formally reported. My daughter reported inappropriate behavior." But the school said they found nothing concrete. That doesn't mean it didn't happen, I replied firmly. She looked at me like someone staring at a puzzle missing pieces. I held her gaze. Inside, my stomach was churning, but outside, I was a wall. And did you know anyone who might want to harm him? Probably many people. If what he did to children was a pattern, he must have collected enemies. The detective wrote something down and then dismissed me. I left there staggering, but with the conviction that my silence needed to last. That night, I locked all the doors, turned off the phone, slept with a baseball bat beside the bed. Days later, I was surprised by something that completely threw me off balance. I came home and found my daughter crying in the bathroom. She was holding the unicorn plush in her hands, squeezing it hard, as if she wanted to crush it. "What's wrong, my love?" She took a while to answer. She was sobbing so much she couldn't breathe. When she finally spoke, the words came cutting. I remember everything. I remembered his face. I dreamed. He made me promise I wouldn't tell. That if I told, he would appear at night and take you away. I felt my heart shatter. I knelt down and hugged her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to explode. But I just breathed with her. Until she calmed down. Until her world fit back into a mother's arms. After she fell asleep, I went out on the balcony and faced the starry sky. I had done what I needed to do. But now I wanted more. It wasn't enough to have eliminated one man. I wanted the school, the principal, those who knew, those who laughed at me. They would be next. I wanted the school. That night, between my daughter's sobs and the rage pulsing under my skin, something inside me transformed. I was no longer just the mother seeking justice. I was no longer a woman in a white coat trying to maintain dignity before a rotten system. I was the storm they pretended not to see coming. I took my laptop and started digging, name by name, address by address. I entered the principal's full name in the public records search. I found her participation in educational councils, events, political meetings. She wasn't just an educator. She was a well-connected woman. Photos with councilmen, columns in local newspapers. She gave lectures on educational ethics. The irony corroded me. And then I found what I needed. An old complaint, filed away. 10 years ago, the same principal had been cited in a process involving omission in the face of inappropriate conduct by an employee, but the case had been covered up, archived for lack of evidence. Nothing happens by chance. That was a pattern. I printed everything, put together a dossier, attached reports from mothers in social media groups. Some, when they saw my anonymous post, sent messages telling about strange behaviors from the same counselor. No one had had the courage to expose it. Most silenced themselves out of fear of retaliation or shame. That's what they did. Covered up. Discredited. Destroyed. But not with me. The following week, I filed a formal complaint against the school administration. I hired a lawyer who had already sued institutions for serious moral damages. I gathered all the screenshots, audios, documents. I did everything legally, carefully, like a surgeon opening a festering wound. The school's response came quickly. A public note in the newspaper saying they deeply regretted that a mother's pain was transformed into unfounded attacks against the honor of dedicated professionals. Hypocrites. I began to be watched. My car was scratched. I received an anonymous letter with a sentence written in cutout letters. "You've already caused too many problems." I wasn't intimidated. If they wanted war, I would show them they were playing with fire until they found someone willing to burn everything down. At the hospital, my boss called me to talk. "Is everything okay at home?" she asked with a loaded voice. "Why the question?" I retorted. "We received an anonymous call saying that maybe you were emotionally unstable. An informal complaint." I held back my laughter. They wanted to destabilize me. They wanted to cut my voice where I was strongest. "I'm fine. And if you need an emotional certificate, I can ask my psychologist to write one." It was a lie. I had never done therapy in my life, but I needed to seem unshakable. The next day, my lawyer got a hearing with a prosecutor who, according to him, was the father of 3 girls. When he heard my report, his eyes filled with tears. "You bring me names? Evidence?" "I brought everything," I replied, pushing the dossier across the table. He leafed through it with the attention of a father who had just understood the real danger. "I'm going to take this forward. It may take time, but believe me, I won't file it away." When I left that building, my knees were shaking. I didn't know if the prosecutor would keep his word, but it was the first time I saw an adult face react with real empathy, without treating me like hysterical or a liar. But my daughter, she was still fighting her ghosts. One night, I woke up to a scream. I ran to her room and found her in panic, pointing at the closet door. "He was there, Mommy!" He appeared. I saw him. I hugged her tightly, holding her sweaty little hands. "He can't hurt you anymore. Never again." Deep down, I knew that trauma wouldn't go away with a "it's over." That would stick to her like a shadow. But it was my mission now to guide that girl through the darkness with every firm step I took outside. Every name exposed, every action taken, every person held accountable. All of this would be a brick in the protection wall around her. But the enemies multiplied. I received emails from fake accounts, veiled threats. One of them said, "You want to bring down the school? You'll fall with it." I didn't delete it. I saved everything, showed it to my lawyer. He sighed. "We're bothering the right people." And then, something happened. An investigative journalist contacted me. He said he saw my complaint and was following the case, that he had internal sources, that there was a pattern of protecting aggressors within the school network, not just at this school. He said that this counselor, the one who disappeared, had already been through other institutions, and that the current principal, guess what, had been responsible for protecting another employee involved in a scandal covered up in the neighboring city. It was bigger than I thought. I was inside a system, a sick system, but I was no longer a fragile piece. I was the short circuit. And deep in my chest, while watching my daughter sleep, I promised myself, as long as I'm alive, no child will be silenced like mine was. That phrase became my fuel, but it also became my sentence. The following days became a careful dance between my work, the veiled threats, and the constant fear of being followed. I started changing my routes. I began leaving my daughter with the neighbor instead of going straight to pick her up at school. I always watched rearview mirrors. I always distrusted cars that slowed down too close. But I continued. The journalist who contacted me got back in touch, this time with something even more disturbing. "I have a recording," he said, in a low tone, almost afraid of being heard even through the call. "Of what?" I asked, with my heart racing. "A conversation between the principal and another employee. It was recorded by a janitor. They talk about controlling the narrative and mention that they can't allow the doctor to destabilize the school's structure. And more, there's a part where she says that the counselor knew too much." The words left me frozen. The bastard who hurt my daughter knew too much? They knew? "Can you send me that?" I asked. "Yes, but be careful. You've stirred up a hornet's nest. And now there are more people watching you than you imagine." Hearing that recording was like taking a punch. The principal spoke coldly. She used expressions like, "The media forgets quickly," and "the institution's reputation is more important than an unbalanced child." I trembled with rage. And more than ever, I felt I was right. They didn't just know what was happening. They chose to protect the aggressor. The next morning, I called my lawyer and asked him to double the security measures around the case. He suggested I leave home for a while. Stay in a hotel. Don't tell anyone where you are. Take your daughter and disappear for a few days. We'll file the recordings with the prosecutor's office, with total secrecy. That's what I did. I told the hospital I would take leave for personal reasons. I took my daughter and went to an inn far from the city, a place without much movement, surrounded by forest, with simple cabins. I thought it would be good for her to breathe different air. I thought the world would feel lighter, but trauma travels with us. On a rainy night, she had another crisis. She woke up screaming, saying she heard the unicorn's noise and that the man was going to come through the window. I hugged her tightly, sang softly the song she liked, and swore everything would be okay. But I was shattered. Nothing prepared me to see my daughter fighting with such heavy memories in such a small body. The next day, I received an envelope under the cabin door. No address, no mark, just a sheet with large letters written by hand. "You can run, but you're dragging an innocent child into the fire with you. Stop." I was paralyzed. The first thing I thought was, how did they find us here? I called the inn's administration. They hadn't seen anything. No strangers. No one knew. But someone knew. Someone was monitoring my steps. I made my daughter pack her bag immediately. We drove for almost 3 hours until we stopped in a smaller city where a doctor friend had a country house. I called her, explained briefly, and she welcomed us without hesitation. There, at least, there was some sense of security. But even there, the tension wouldn't leave me. I woke up several times a night with noises that were probably just in my head. Sounds of steps, wood creaking, whispered voices. I was constantly alert. I slept with a knife under the pillow. Meanwhile, the prosecutor filed the first action against the principal, based on the recordings. The journalist published an article that, even with the name suppressed, made it clear who the doctor involved was. The local community exploded, comments calling me unbalanced. Others saying I was too brave to be real. Mothers started talking. One of them, whose son had been transferred from school 2 years before, wrote an anonymous letter that reached me. She reported something similar: inappropriate touching, strange games with dolls, and the child's fear of being punished if he told. I started gathering everything. It was like putting together a dark puzzle. And the more pieces emerged, the clearer it became. The school was a machine for silencing victims. And now, this machine was trying to crush me. But something inside me, maybe the same instinct that made me call that man in the past, told me I couldn't stop. That if I backed down now, every mother who dared to speak after me would be treated as crazy. That my daughter, one day, would grow up and understand everything, and would ask me if I fought for her to the end. And I want to be able to look into her eyes and say, yes, I fought until the last thread of strength, but I was exhausting myself. The days in that country house gave me the false sensation of security, as if we were in a bubble protected from reality. But as soon as the night's silence fell, I went back to feeling hunted. My daughter slept better there, maybe because she didn't recognize the environment, maybe by instinct. But I felt like a cornered animal. Every noise, every phone notification, every car headlight at the gate made me jump up. It was on a calm afternoon that everything exploded. The journalist called me. His voice trembled. The story gained traction. It was shared by a national page. The press is looking for names. And is that good or bad? I asked with a weight in my throat. It's going to hurt, but it's necessary. I knew. When you throw the truth at the fan, the dirt doesn't choose where it lands. And I was about to be hit by all the mud that school had hidden for years. The next morning, my name was everywhere. Doctor denounces school abuse network. Victim's mother moves investigation in traditional school. Vigilante mother or unbalanced? What's behind the bombshell complaint? The comments on social media were a battlefield. Half the people called me a hero. The other half accused me of making everything up to gain fame or money. They said I was histrionic, that I influenced my daughter with false memories, that no 7-year-old child could tell that with so many details. I read, felt my stomach turn, and closed the tab. My daughter saw one of these headlines while using the tablet. She turned to me and asked, "Mom, why are they talking about us?" "Because Mommy told the truth, my love, and there are people who don't like to hear the truth." She fell silent, then went back to the cartoon. I went to the bathroom and cried softly, leaning against the door. And then, the unexpected happened. A former teacher from the school contacted me. She had resigned 3 years before. She sent me a message to the email I used to file the complaint and asked to talk in person. We met at a discreet cafe. She was a woman in her 50s. Thick glasses, serious face. She looked around before speaking. "I saw things," she began. "Many things. I suspected the counselor. And the principal. There was a strange tension whenever she talked to him. Excessive care. But I only really understood when a student told me she didn't want to play the unicorn game anymore. She was crying. She was scared. I took this to the principal. And the next day, I received a warning. Either withdraw the complaint, or my professional life would be destroyed. "And you?" I asked. I resigned. I kept quiet. Out of cowardice, out of fear. Until today. She handed me a folder with old reports, internal emails, including a memo from the administration with an extra clause. Any conduct that could denigrate the school's image should be immediately silenced and treated internally. That was gold. Proof that the cover-up was institutionalized. I showed everything to my lawyer. He reacted with wide eyes. This is enough to open a criminal investigation against the administration. That week, the prosecutor who supported me got authorization. The school was officially investigated. Search warrants were issued. And for the first time, the arrogant faces of the principal and her accomplices appeared pale in the news. But with that came the backlash. My bank account was hacked. A considerable amount was transferred to an overseas account. The police called me, insinuating that I might be trying to launder money with the media exposure. My name was dragged through the mud for a few weeks. My medical license was put under evaluation by pressure from an anonymous complaint. I was suspended from the hospital where I worked for institutional prudence. That was it. The machine trying to grind me up. And then, one night, I received a call that made me tremble. "Hi, Unicorn Girl's mom," said a male voice, nasal, mocking. "I hope you're proud. You may have brought down one, but there were more people in this little game. And when the police start digging, you'll realize you messed with a spider web. And you know what the spider does to those who touch it? The phone hung up. For the first time, in a long time, I felt real fear. Not just for me, but for her, for my daughter, for my mother who was taking care of her while I dealt with lawyers, with journalists, with investigations. I went to the window. In the dark, I swore I saw someone standing in the street, motionless, a shadow. I couldn't identify it, but I understood the message. They were warning you went too far. But what they still didn't know is that there's no too far for a mother with blood in her eyes. If they thought I was going to back down now, it was because they still hadn't met what a woman can become when everything is taken from her. Peace, career, her daughter's innocence. I wasn't going to stop. I was going to finish what I started, even if it was with my own hands. But I didn't need to. The morning after that threatening call, I received news that pierced my chest like an arrow. The principal had been arrested. It wasn't because of me, not directly. The investigation network had revealed something even bigger, a scheme to protect aggressors within the municipal network. Everything tied up with false donations, forged documents, and criminal omissions. She tried to escape, but was caught in a neighboring city, trying to use her sister's name at a cheap hotel. When the police arrived, she claimed she was on leave to take care of her mental health. Ironic. The same woman who laughed at my daughter's pain now said she was shaken. The news exploded in the newspapers. The journalist who had helped me published an extensive article with testimonies from former employees, students, and mothers. And this time, people listened. Because there were faces, documents, evidence. Because there were real bodies carrying traumas that could no longer be ignored. In the following days, I received dozens of messages from fathers and mothers, some apologizing for having doubted, others thanking me for speaking up. A woman whose son had taken his own life 2 years before told me she always suspected the school, but no one ever believed her. I cried reading that message. I cried for all the voices that tried before me and were silenced. But the personal consequences were still there. I stayed away from work for months. I had to file a formal lawsuit to reestablish my medical license and prove that the accusations of emotional instability were a setup. I won, but the taste of victory came with the weight of everything I lost. My daughter started therapy. At first, she just drew, didn't speak, made unicorns with sad eyes and windows with bars. But with time, she began to verbalize. The psychologist told me that, although the trauma was deep, she was reacting. She was rebuilding herself. And one day, on the way home, she told me something I keep to this day. Mom, thank you for not pretending nothing happened. That was worth more than any sentence, headline, or legal victory. A year later, I received an invitation to participate in a medical congress on child mental health. I declined. I wasn't ready yet. But when I went to the bookstore one day, I saw my name cited in a book report about the case. They spoke of me as the mother who set silence on fire. I smiled, not out of vanity, but for knowing that that woman, who once prepared rabanadas thinking her daughter was just sad, had become a force that brought down giants. As for the man on the call, I never heard from him again. Neither the first one, the tattooed one I spoke with that night, nor any other involved. It was as if they had dissolved into thin air, a dirty piece of the world that lent me its shadow to do justice, and then disappeared. Today, I live more simply. I moved to a smaller city. My daughter studies at a school where all teachers know her name and her story, where she can breathe. I went back to practicing as a doctor, but part-time. The rest of the time, I dedicate to guiding mothers who went through the same as me. I've participated in investigations, helped lawyers, written articles, some published, others blocked, but all sincere. And with each new report that arrives, each new mother who tells me no one believed me, I remember what brought me here. The smell of rabanadas, my daughter's look, the paper with that tattooed man's number. Today, people call me strong, a warrior, but I know who I am. I'm a woman who saw the abyss in her own daughter's eyes and decided to jump into it to tear the monster out with her own hands. And if that makes me dangerous in their eyes, then great. Because mothers like me, who lost their fear, are exactly the type of woman these monsters should fear. Did you like the story? Then don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss the next stories. Here, every story is told with emotion, courage, and that touch of justice everyone loves to see. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've been through something similar, know that you're not alone. See you in the next video. Until then. My not boyfriend said we were not a couple, so I broke his heart. We have been seeing each other for a year, and everything looked and seemed like we are a couple. He said he loved me, and I him. He spends every weekend with me, and we have planned our first trip together, etc. Last weekend he was in bed, and I made him pancakes because his birthday was on Tuesday. He was very happy about it and joked that I was spoiling him. I said that I wanted to spoil my man. He said I am not your man, with the same energy. He didn't seem awkward or embarrassed, just as calm with a smile on his stupid face. I didn't take it seriously and said, yeah, I know you are not my man. He was more serious now and said, no, really, I am not your boyfriend. I felt sick, but I tried to be calm and I asked what we are. He said, I don't know, great FWB. I didn't say anything after that and he ate his pancakes in silence. Later, he asked if we would do anything. I said that I was planning on cleaning and doing some paperwork. He left after an hour. I ran to the bathroom to be sick and I probably cried for a solid 2 hours. I couldn't keep anything in my stomach for the rest of the day. He texted that evening thanking me for the breakfast in bed and that he thought I was amazing. But I didn't answer, so he called a few times. I didn't answer. Around 10 p.m. he rang my door. I just opened a jar and pretended I was sick with the flu and was going to bed. He offered to stay the night in case I needed help during the night and I said no. I didn't answer him on Sunday or Monday and I didn't wish him a happy birthday on Tuesday either, and I have just been keeping it short texts feigning sickness. He never brought up what he said once. Then yesterday he wrote that he missed me and that he hadn't gone this long without talking to me since we met and that he was going mad. He asked if we could at least have dinner. I said that I was very busy. He said, don't you miss me? I said that I was very tired because I was out all night with a guy last night. When I sent that last message saying I was exhausted because I had spent the night with another guy, my heart was racing. I was trembling, not from guilt, because I hadn't done anything with anyone, but from anger at being made a fool. For the first time since that unbearable conversation at breakfast, I felt like I had regained some control. And it didn't take even 5 minutes. He saw it, typed, stopped, typed again, disappeared, came back. Anxiety took over my chest, but I didn't let it show. I put my phone aside and went to shower as if all of that wasn't corroding every part of my pride. When I came back, there was a response. Short. Seriously? I read it. Ignored it. The game was mine now. 2 hours later, another message. You can do whatever you want. Just don't complain later. I smiled. He thought he was threatening me, but I knew that tone. It was jealousy disguised as arrogance. He always thought he was clever. Irresistible. The prize. So convinced that no matter what he did, I would continue there, willing to be the woman who makes pancakes and settles for crumbs of affection. But not this time. At night, around 10:30, when the street was already silent and I was already lying down with my face buried in the pillow, I heard the doorbell. My heart raced. I knew it was him. No one else would show up like that, unannounced, at that hour. I let it ring. Then a light knock on the door. And another one. I got up slowly, without making noise, as if I were a thief in my own house. I peeked through the side window. It was him, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, with that corner-of-the-mouth smile as if he were doing me a favor by being there. Pure arrogance. I didn't open. He grabbed his phone, vibrating. Open up. I just want to talk. You know this tantrum of yours won't last. Tantrum. He thought I was having a tantrum. I replied, you said you weren't my boyfriend. I'm just enjoying my freedom. The response came in seconds. Freedom you never wanted. You'll get tired of this little theater quickly. Call me when it passes. I read that and laughed. Out loud. A dry, almost nervous laugh. He still believed I would run after him. That I would beg. That he was the prize. But that night, the one who got tired was me. Tired of begging for crumbs of dignity. Tired of being called friend with benefits after a year of sharing every weekend. Tired of preparing surprises for someone who didn't even consider me a partner. He knocked again. This time, harder. Are you going to keep pretending you're not home now? He shouted, low but firm. His voice choked with anger. You weren't like this, you know. What kind of guy did you go out with yesterday, huh? Was he good? Better than me? Silence. I didn't even expect that. He was actually jealous. The king of indifference, shaken. I almost felt vindicated there, but it still wasn't enough. I opened the window calmly and looked into his eyes. It's none of your business, I replied. You're not my boyfriend, remember? His look transformed. From arrogance came surprise. Then anger. You're not going to provoke me, ignore me, and still treat me like just anyone. Understand? But that's exactly what you did to me. For a year. He took a step back, breathed deeply, looked at the ground. Then, he stared at me again with a forced smile. You'll get tired. You'll realize that none of these guys will know you like I know you. You'll miss it. And when that happens, I'll be here. Don't be, I replied. And I closed the window. That night, he left. But I knew it wasn't over. His ego was too big to accept a no as an answer. The jealousy would grow. The insecurity too. And for the first time, I felt the game had turned. Because he might not call me his girlfriend. But now, he was the one who couldn't sleep. And me? I was just beginning. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy head and a tight chest. It was still hard to swallow all of that. His words echoed like an insistent buzzing. You'll get tired. When that happens, I'll be here. He thought he was something, in such a disgusting and arrogant way that I felt dirty just remembering that I had gotten involved with him, that I had desired that body, that touch. How could I have deluded myself so much? I grabbed my phone and started deleting old conversations. There were hundreds of messages, memes, videos, promises thrown between laughs and nights that, in my head, meant something. To him, just distraction between one hookup and another, I realize now. But the worst was yet to come. I went out for coffee with Vanessa, my best friend. I needed to talk to someone, get everything out. She had always been my anchor, my lucidity in storms. When I arrived, she looked at me with that worried expression, like someone who already felt I was about to collapse. Did he mess up again? She asked before I even sat down. I told her everything, from the conversation about not being my boyfriend to the lie about going out with another guy. When I finished, she was silent for a while. Then she breathed deeply, stirring her coffee cup as if weighing each word. Girl, there's something I never wanted to tell you. I thought he would grow up, change, but now I see he never respected you. My stomach turned. What? Do you remember that time we went to the bar with the college crowd? A few months after you two started dating? I nodded, already feeling my blood freeze. So, he came to talk to me. He complimented me, kept making too much conversation. At the time, I thought it was just friendliness. But then, when you went to the bathroom, he approached and asked if I had ever thought about hooking up with both of you at the same time. I froze, literally. I stayed motionless. Heat rose through my face and my throat closed up. What? I told him to go fuck himself, of course. I said you were my best friend and that he was an idiot. He just laughed, said it was a joke, that the important thing was to enjoy life without labels. And that was it. But after that, I started noticing. He flirted with others too, always on the sidelines. I felt bad, but I didn't want to hurt you. I closed my eyes tightly. How did I not see? How was I so blind? The way he stayed glued to his phone when he was with me, the smiles he exchanged with strangers, the new friendships on Instagram every week. And you're sure that I started to ask, but the answer came before I even finished. Yes, he's already gone out with at least 2 girls from our class. One of them told me he said he had no commitment to anyone, that it was just fun. This while he was with you every weekend. A mixture of disgust, disappointment, and humiliation took over me. I felt like screaming, breaking something, disappearing. He made me pancakes and said he loved me with the same mouth that complimented my friends behind my back. And he still thought I would beg for him. He used me, deceived me, treated me like an option, like a safe base while he experimented with the world. While he collected bodies, kisses, and glances, I was there, giving myself, surrendering, thinking the love was reciprocal. But it wasn't love. It was convenience. It was ego. I spent the rest of the afternoon in silence. Vanessa tried to talk more, but I could only shake my head. The world around me seemed in slow motion. The laughter of other customers in the cafe irritated me. I wanted to get up and scream for everyone to hear. He didn't love me. He lied to me. He's a fraud. But I stayed quiet. On the way home, anger transformed into something even more powerful. Focus. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to hide anymore. He underestimated me. And now he was going to find out what it means to play with the wrong heart. I spent the night awake, sitting on the couch, going over everything. Every word, every attitude, every slip. I put together the puzzle, and in the end, I saw the clear portrait of a scoundrel. But this time, I wouldn't just be another piece. The revenge, the one that was being slowly drawn inside me, was almost ready. And when it was put into practice, he would taste the bitter flavor of being disposable, the same way he made me feel. The plan began to form that very night, between dry tears and lost gazes at the ceiling. But it wasn't driven just by pain. It was by truth, by the brutal clarity that came after the last disappointment. I didn't just want to disappear from his life. I wanted him to see, for him to feel, for him to live the same discomfort he planted in me during all those months when he pretended to be something he never was. And, ironically, the idea came when I thought of the only person who had already warned me about him, Lucas. Lucas was the complete opposite of that idiot. Polite, calm, always with a gentle sense of humor and an honest look. A guy who listened more than he spoke, who didn't need to show off or compete for attention. The first time we met was at a party when my almost boyfriend introduced me to him with that typical tone of possession, as if saying, "This is my girl. Don't try anything." Lucas smiled and greeted me with respect, but it was only when we met again, by chance, at an academic event weeks later, that we really talked. I remember his words perfectly from that night. "You seem too nice for someone like him. Just take care of yourself, okay?" At the time, I thought it was an exaggeration. I thought he was being too critical of his own friend. But now everything made sense. Lucas already knew who he was. He had already seen the rot up close. And now, he would be part of my healing. Not because I wanted to play with someone's feelings, but because, for the first time, I wanted to put myself as a priority. And yes, maybe a little revenge entered the package. I wanted him to see that there were better men, that there were people who knew how to love, and that the woman he dismissed was desired by someone with more character than he would ever have. I sent a direct message to Lucas. Something simple. "Hi, I know this might seem strange, but you're right about him, and I wanted to thank you for being honest. Do you have time this week? I wanted to talk." He replied half an hour later. "I do. Want to have coffee tomorrow?" The next day we met. I went with a tight heart, not knowing what to expect, but he received me with a light hug and a welcoming smile, the kind that calms even the loudest internal chaos. We talked for hours. I told him everything, without filter, without playing the victim, and he listened, without interrupting, without trying to minimize. When I finished, he breathed deeply. "I tried to warn you, but he's been my friend for years, and even so, he was always like this. Charming, impulsive, a womanizer. He never respected any girl. But with you, it was more cruel, because he knew you loved him." I stayed silent. He was right. I had loved, with all my strength. But now it's enough, I continued. He lost me, and I don't want to live in function of the pain anymore. I want to turn the page, and, if you allow me, I want to do this with someone who truly sees me. Lucas looked at me surprised but not shocked, as if he already expected that. At some point, this would happen. "You deserve more than he gave you, and more than he'll understand one day," he said. And yes, I'm here. It was the first time in weeks that I felt peace. But also, in some dark corner of my mind, I knew, when he finds out, and he will find out, he won't be able to stand it. Because nothing hurts a narcissist more than seeing his ex almost being happy with someone he considers inferior. But Lucas wasn't inferior. He was exactly what the other never was. Honest, transparent, present. And that would hurt much more than any silence of mine. Because now, I had a voice. I had choice. I had power. And the one who once thought I would always be there waiting would soon see that the world turns. And sometimes it turns beautifully. It didn't take long for the news to reach him. I knew it would be a matter of time. Men like him always have eyes and ears everywhere, especially when they think they've lost control over someone they judged predictable. And the truth is, he never imagined, not for a second, that I would be capable of turning the game around. It was on Saturday night. I was with Lucas at a discreet restaurant, nothing luxurious, but charming, with low lights and a guitar playing in the background. We were laughing at some silly joke. Dessert shared in the middle of the table when I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. 1, 2, 3 messages in a row. "Are you seriously with him? Have you lost your mind? We need to talk. Now." I didn't respond. Lucas saw my expression change and asked if everything was okay. I smiled with the most fake tranquility in the world and replied that I would explain later. I stayed there with him, present, because that moment was mine. For the first time in a long time, I wanted to be selfish. Let him wait, feel, brood. It was the least. But the next day, he showed up. He didn't even bother to send a message first. He rang the doorbell forcefully, as if he had some right to demand. As if our story was paused and he now decided to press the play button. I opened the door. He was there, with a closed face, red eyes, and heavy breathing. The air of an owner, of a wounded man. of an alpha male out of his cage. Are you hooking up with Lucas? He spat the question as if it were an offense. Good morning to you too. Stop beating around the bush. Answer me. Are you really hooking up with him? I crossed my arms and stared. I am. Why? Does it bother you? He laughed. A mocking and irritated laugh at the same time, running his hand through his hair and walking in circles, as if trying to control his own anger. You're unbelievable. With my best friend? Seriously? That's low even for you. Low? I repeated, feeling anger rise like a high tide. You're talking about low now? After everything you did? It's not the same thing. I never hooked up with any of your friends. But you tried, didn't you? I shot back. Coldly. He froze. His eyes widened for a second, then looked away, as if searching for a quick escape from his own guilt. What are you talking about? About Vanessa. You thought she would never tell me? That night at the bar. You said you wanted to hook up with both of us at the same time. Remember now? He fell silent, a silence that screamed louder than any justification. That was a joke, he said finally. You know I talk shit sometimes. I would never really do that. It wasn't a joke to me, or to her. And even if it was, what kind of joke is that? Coming from someone who said he loved me. I love you. Damn it, that's why I'm here. Because I love you, and you're throwing this away because of an idiot who shouldn't even be in our circle. Funny. Now you use the word love. But when I made pancakes for your birthday, you said you weren't my boyfriend, that we were just friends with benefits. Remember? That wasn't a joke. You were clear. Cold. Convinced. I was confused. I didn't know what I felt. No. You knew. You just didn't want to give up the others. And now that you see me happy with someone who surpasses you in everything, you come here demanding morals? He huffed. He was disarmed, but still trying to seem offended. His eyes were full, as if they wanted to cry, but pride held back. Because deep down, he didn't feel love. He felt possession. And losing it was the real trigger. He's only with you to provoke me, he said in a last gasp of vanity. No. He's with me because he wanted to. Because he respects me. Because he listens to me. Because he values me. Something you never did. He looked at me, as if he were seeing a stranger. As if, for the first time, he understood that I was no longer the woman who made pancakes smiling and waited for a crumb of affection. I was someone else. And this version, he didn't know, and wouldn't have the chance to know. Go away, I said firmly, and enjoy the walk to think about everything you lost. He hesitated. He looked around, as if looking for something that would make him stay. But there was nothing left. No excuse. No chance. No us. And I closed the door. Not just of the house, but of the story. The following Monday, while I was still processing everything that had happened with the not-boyfriend over the weekend, his unexpected visit, the shouting, the look of surprise when he discovered I knew everything, I received a message from Lucas. Hey, I wanted to take you away from routine this week. Want to have dinner with me again? Nothing fancy, I promise. Just me, you, and good pizza. I smiled. For the first time in days, I really smiled. The kind of smile that isn't a response to a provocation or a bitter victory. It was just lightness, peace, a genuine desire to be with someone without having to walk on eggshells or pretend to be less than I am. I replied with a simple, Wednesday night is all yours. And that was it. Simple, direct, true, like he always was with me. On Wednesday, I got ready more calmly. Nothing exaggerated. Jeans, a light blouse, and just mascara to bring life to my eyes. It wasn't about impressing. It was about feeling good. About going out with someone who made me laugh, who listened to me, who treated me like a priority, not like a pastime. He came to pick me up. He opened the car door with that somewhat shy, somewhat gentleman from the past century way, and greeted me with a sincere smile. I missed your laugh, he said as soon as I got in. And I missed someone who makes me laugh, I replied. We went to a small but charming pizzeria in downtown. A cozy place, old wooden tables, funny pictures on the walls, and a waiter who already seemed to know Lucas by name. The usual? The waiter asked with a smile. Today I have special company, so I wanted extra good, Lucas replied, looking at me with that calm and warm gaze. We talked about everything. Work, music, teenage embarrassments, old movies we love that no one else watches anymore. I laughed, caught myself playing with my hair, crossing and uncrossing my legs, as if my whole body was reacting to the lightness of the night. It was so different from the heavy conversations and tense silences I used to live. There, I was myself, whole, without fear. After the pizza, we walked down the street, unhurried, like people who don't want the night to end. He asked me if I was okay after what happened with his ex-friend, and I answered honestly, I'm not 100% yet, but I'm rebuilding myself, little by little. And you've been helping with that more than you imagine. He smiled, but this time it was a different smile, a little more serious, more loaded with feeling. I never wanted to interfere, never wanted to force anything. But since I met you, at that ridiculous party where he treated you like you were just another one, I knew he didn't deserve you. And do you think you deserve me? He stopped walking. He looked at me for a few seconds until he said, I don't know if I deserve you, but I admire you. I respect you. And I do want to really get to know you, not for what he painted you as, for who you are. My heart raced. I didn't expect that. Not so direct. Not so beautiful. Then get to know me, I replied, with a voice firmer than I thought I had. We stood there, in the middle of the sidewalk, looking at each other as if the world had given us a truce. And when he slowly approached, asking with his eyes if he could kiss me, I just closed my eyes and let it happen. It was a calm kiss, full of care, without rush, without ulterior motives. It was as if it said, I'm here, and I won't hurt you. And in that moment, I believed, because I deserve that. After so many games, so many lies, so many silences, I deserved a man who knew how to be light. And if by chance the other found out, if he writhed with rage, if he screamed, if he went crazy, that was his problem. The pain he caused me no longer imprisoned me. And now I had someone who looked at me like no one had ever looked before, without fear, without doubt, as if I had finally chosen right. A few weeks after that kiss with Lucas, my life seemed to have found a new axis. It wasn't perfect. Nothing is. But for the first time in a long time, I woke up calm, without waiting for messages that didn't come, without measuring words, without walking on eggshells. Lucas didn't make me play games. He was just there, present, real. And that, for someone like me who spent a year being treated like an option with exclusive packaging, was liberating. We started going out frequently. Movies, cafes, walks, nights at home cooking together. He knew my silences and didn't fill them with empty promises. He just listened to me, made me laugh, made me feel seen, and of course the other couldn't stand it. His ego wouldn't let him. In the third week, he showed up in front of the building where I lived, without warning. He looked like someone who hadn't slept for days. Wrinkled clothes, red eyes. But even so, his pride was intact. Arrogance doesn't wash away with tears. You've become a slut. He spat as soon as he saw me coming down, without even saying good morning. The word hit my chest like a spark, but instead of igniting me inside, it froze me. For a second, just a second, I almost laughed. Sluts, in your head, are women who don't kneel when you snap your fingers, right? I replied, crossing my arms. Who don't make pancakes on your birthday after hearing they're not your girlfriend? He huffed, paced back and forth like a caged animal. You're with Lucas. Lucas? My best friend? Do you think that's right? Do you think that's dignified? What I think, I said, approaching, is that you were never my boyfriend, remember? You repeated that like a mantra. Friends with benefits. No labels. Just have fun. Well then. I freed myself from your label of nothing and found someone who wanted to be everything. He stared at me with anger. But it was anger at himself, and I knew it. And you know what the difference between you and him is? I continued. You desired me. He chose me. You used me to inflate your ego. He listens to me, respects me, values me. You left me crying whole nights. He makes me sleep smiling. He tried to laugh as if he were above it all. He's just using you to get to me. No, dear. He doesn't even talk about you. You're the past. A mistake I've already overcome. The one who's still obsessed here is you. He closed his face, fists clenched. But I wasn't afraid. You were never a man to me. You were a spoiled boy who collected women like trophies, and now you're freaking out because one of them decided to leave the shelf. Do you think he'll love you forever? He screamed without arguments. He'll get tired too. Everyone gets tired. Maybe so. Or not. But at least if it ends, it will be with dignity. With respect. Not with lies, betrayal, and cowardice. He fell silent, for the first time, without an answer. The mask of superiority slowly falling. Then I delivered the final blow. I was everything you said you wanted. Faithful, present, caring, dedicated. But you were so busy trying to seem free that you lost someone who just wanted to love you. And the worst part, you didn't lose to a stranger, but to someone who saw your trash and still decided to see me. He lowered his gaze, swallowed hard, and turned his back. He left without saying anything else. And there, I knew, not only that I was free from him, but that, this time, he was the one who would sleep with his stomach churning, that he was the one who would check his phone and not see my name, that he was the one who would remember my touch, my laugh, my care, and know he would never have any of that again. Vanessa, my best friend, never wanted to know about him again. She distanced herself from everyone in common who still insisted on saying that he just didn't know how to love. She said that those who don't know how to love, learn. Only those who don't want to, don't learn. And he, clearly, never wanted to. Lucas, on the other hand, stayed by my side. Not as a consolation prize, but as someone who saw my cracks and decided not to run away. He made me remember that love isn't noise, drama, or uncertainty. It's presence. It's peace. And as for me, I didn't become cold or bitter, but I stopped accepting the minimum disguised as everything. I learned that whoever doesn't claim you doesn't deserve you. Whoever diminishes you when you give yourself isn't a man. He's just a boy playing at having a woman. And especially, I learned that we don't beg for love. We withdraw, with class, with dignity, and let karma do the rest. A few months passed since that last confrontation, and the storm finally dissipated from my life. The one who once swore not to be my boyfriend, who laughed at my dedication, my affection, my loyalty, today is nothing more than a distant shadow. I hear from time to time that he still comments about me, as if we were an unresolved story. Some mutual friends say he's been quieter, more lost, more bitter. But honestly, I don't care anymore, because now, I'm happy, truly happy. Lucas and I made our relationship official in a light way, without pressure, without social media making a fuss. It was on a common late afternoon, after coffee and a walk in the park. He held my hand, looked into my eyes and said, "I know you came from a place where love was doubt, but with me, I want it to be certainty. If you're still ready to love, I'm here. Not as a prize, but as someone who wants to build something with you." I said yes, and I never regretted it. Today, our days are calm, full of laughter, long conversations, and lingering kisses. He makes me pancakes, and I make sure to remember how good it is to have someone who isn't afraid to say, "I love you," and prove it every day, without needing to play games. The pain of the past still exists, but now it's just a scar. It doesn't hurt anymore. It just serves to remind me how much I've grown, how much I deserve, how much I accepted crumbs for so long, without knowing there was a feast waiting for me at the right table, next to the right person. Lucas was never a trophy of my revenge. He was the unexpected cure, the beautiful detail after so much mess, the soft light after so much darkness. And me? I'm the one he didn't want to claim, who he said wasn't his girlfriend, who he thought would beg for crumbs of attention. Today, I'm the official girlfriend of his best friend, the one who walks hand in hand down the street without needing to hide, the one who is introduced with pride, not as a friend, but as the woman I chose. And if there's one thing I learned from all this, it's that whoever doesn't claim you doesn't deserve you. Whoever underestimates you loses you. And whoever knows what they have in their hands takes care of it. Loves it, stays. During dinner, my uncle slammed the door in my face and said I wasn't family, then kicked me out. My name is Maya, and I've been the family ghost for as long as I can remember. At 28, I've perfected the art of being simultaneously essential and invisible, called when they need something moved, forgotten when invitations are handed out. Growing up, I learned early that love in our house came with conditions I could never meet. My mother had this way of speaking that could slice through bone, always finding the exact words that would leave the deepest cuts. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. My sister was everything I wasn't: graceful, charming, the kind of person who could walk into a room and instantly become its center. I was the reliable one, the one who helped with groceries, who remembered birthdays when everyone else forgot, who showed up early to help set up and stayed late to clean. But reliable doesn't get you a seat at the table when it matters. Reliable gets you a phone call at 10 p.m., asking if you can pick up something they forgot at the store. The pattern established itself so early I thought it was normal. Family gatherings where my achievements were glossed over in 30 seconds, but my sister's latest promotion, relationship, or vacation got discussed for hours. I'd sit there, contributing when spoken to, laughing at the right moments, playing my part as the supportive background character in their story. By my mid-20s, I started keeping mental tallies. How many times had I been asked to help versus how many times I'd been genuinely asked how I was doing? The ratio was embarrassing. I'd drive 40 minutes to help my uncle move furniture, then not hear from him for months until he needed something else repaired. Last year, I missed my own birthday celebration because I was helping my cousin move into her new apartment. When I finally arrived at the restaurant 2 hours late, they'd already ordered dessert and were getting ready to leave. "Oh, we figured you weren't coming," my mother said with that particular tone she reserved for my disappointments. I've spent years trying to decode what I did wrong. What fundamental flaw made me so easy to overlook? Was it because I never demanded attention the way my sister did? Because I didn't throw tantrums when I felt ignored? Because I just accepted it? The truth is, I've been auditioning for love my entire life, and somehow I never got the part. I became the person who everyone counted on, but no one really saw. The one who would always show up, always help out, always be there, until suddenly I wouldn't be. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story really begins 3 months ago, when I finally realized that being reliable had become my prison, and sometimes the only way out is to stop being who everyone expects you to be. I spent 3 years between ages 25 and 28 trying to crack the code of family acceptance. I studied them like they were a foreign language I needed to master, convinced that if I just tried harder, gave more, showed up more consistently, eventually they'd see me as worthy. The gift phase was particularly pathetic. I'd show up to casual dinners with expensive wine nobody asked for, flowers for no special occasion, thoughtful presents that demonstrated how much I listened to their passing comments. My sister mentioned wanting to try yoga. I bought her a premium mat and blocks. My uncle complained about his old coffee maker. I researched for weeks and bought him a top-of-the-line espresso machine. "You don't have to do this," they'd say. But I could never tell if they meant it or if it was just polite deflection. The gifts were received with thanks that felt hollow, stored away in closets or regifted to others. I once found the expensive scarf I'd given my mother at a church donation bin, still in its original packaging. I volunteered for everything: moving help, airport runs, babysitting, house sitting. I became the family's unpaid concierge service. When my cousin needed someone to watch her cats for a week, I rearranged my vacation days. When my aunt needed help organizing her garage sale, I spent an entire weekend pricing items and dealing with strangers trying to haggle over her old dishes. The most humiliating part was how eager I was to help. I'd practically jump at the opportunity to be useful, as if each favor was a deposit in some imaginary account that would eventually pay out in genuine affection. I convinced myself that their requests meant they trusted me, valued me, needed me. But being needed and being wanted are entirely different things, and I learned that lesson over and over again. I was invited to help set up for parties, but never asked to join the planning conversations. I was asked to take family photos, but rarely included in them. I was the designated driver, but never the one whose opinion mattered when choosing where to go. The breaking point came at my sister's engagement party last spring. I'd spent the entire day helping my mother cook and decorate, arriving at 6 a.m. to prep vegetables and staying until midnight to clean up. During the party, I watched from the kitchen as my family told stories about my sister's childhood, sharing memories and laughing together while I washed dishes. When my uncle raised a toast to all the people who made this celebration possible, his eyes swept right past me to the caterers we'd hired for the main course. I was standing 10 feet away, apron still tied around my waist, and I might as well have been invisible. That night, driving home exhausted and ignored once again, I started to understand something crucial. My efforts weren't invisible because I wasn't trying hard enough. They were invisible because my family had decided long ago that I was the supporting cast member. And no amount of dedicated performance was going to change that casting decision. The revelation should have freed me, but instead it terrified me. If I stopped trying so hard, would they miss me at all? Or would they simply find someone else to fill the role of family helper? 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, I made a decision that felt revolutionary at the time. I wasn't going to volunteer to help with the family dinner. I wasn't going to ask what I could bring, wasn't going to offer to arrive early for prep, wasn't going to automatically assume I was invited just because I was family. The silence was deafening. November 20th came and went without a single call about menu planning or table arrangements. November 25th passed without anyone asking if I could pick up extra chairs or help set up the dining room. By the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I'd convinced myself that this was it. I'd finally succeeded in making myself truly invisible. Then my phone rang. It was my youngest cousin. The only person in my family who had ever treated me like an actual human being rather than a convenient service provider. At 19, she possessed the kind of unfiltered honesty that everyone else in our family had trained out of themselves years ago. "Are you really not coming to Thanksgiving?" she asked without preamble. "Nobody invited me," I said, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "That's stupid. You always come to Thanksgiving." "I always help with Thanksgiving. That's different." There was a pause, and I could practically hear her processing this distinction. "Mom asked me to call you," she finally admitted. "She said to tell you that dinner's at Uncle's house at 3. Same as always." "She asked you to invite me?" "Not exactly. She said to tell you about dinner and see if you were planning to show up and help like usual." The casualness of it hit me like a slap. Not, "Invite Maya to join us," but see if Maya's planning to show up and help. Even my invitation was framed around my utility. "I don't think I'm going to make it this year," I heard myself saying. "Maya, please." Her voice got smaller. "It's going to be so boring without you there. My mom and your sister just talk about people I don't know, and Uncle gets all weird and political after his second beer. You're literally the only person who talks to me like I'm not 12. You could always come have dinner with me instead," I offered half-heartedly, knowing she wouldn't. "You know I can't do that. It would cause World War III. She was right, of course. In our family, loyalty was expected to flow upward through the hierarchy, and a 19-year-old choosing to have dinner with the family, disappointment instead of attending the official gathering, would be seen as an act of rebellion requiring swift punishment. "Just come," she pleaded. "Please, for me?" And there it was, the one argument I couldn't resist. Not because I wanted to subject myself to another holiday of being ignored and taken for granted, but because she was asking. Because in a family full of people who only contacted me when they needed something, she was the one person who contacted me just because she wanted to talk. "Okay," I said. "I'll come." "Really? Really? But I'm not helping with setup and I'm not staying to clean." "Deal," she said quickly, like she was afraid I might change my mind. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment staring at my phone, wondering what I'd just agreed to. I'd spent months building up the courage to set boundaries, only to crumble the moment someone I cared about asked me to cross them. But maybe this time would be different. Maybe showing up without offering to help, without bringing an elaborate dish, without arriving early to prove my worth, would force them to see me differently. Maybe they'd finally understand that I was choosing to be there, not just defaulting to being useful. I should have known better. Hope, when you're desperate for family acceptance, can be the cruelest emotion of all. I drove the 43 minutes to my uncle's house in suburban Millbrook on Thanksgiving afternoon with my stomach churning. I deliberately arrived 15 minutes after the official start time, not early enough to be expected to help, not late enough to be considered rude. The house was already full of cars when I pulled up. I could hear the familiar sounds of family gathering through the windows, multiple conversations, laughter, the clatter of serving dishes. For just a moment, sitting in my car, I felt that old surge of anticipation. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe walking in as a guest rather than an unpaid staff member would shift something fundamental. I walked up the brick pathway carrying only my purse and a bottle of wine, not the expensive kind I used to bring, just a decent bottle from the grocery store, the kind a normal person brings to a normal dinner party. I knocked, then tried the door handle like I had countless times before. Locked. That was unusual. My uncle's front door was never locked during family gatherings. I knocked again, louder this time. The door opened, but only about 6 inches. My uncle's face appeared in the gap, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. He looked uncomfortable, almost guilty, but also resolute in a way that reminded me of my mother when she'd made up her mind about something. "Maya," he said, not moving to open the door wider. "Hi, Uncle. Sorry I'm a little late. Traffic was heavier than I expected. Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding." Behind him, I could see into the dining room. The table was set for exactly the number of people who were there. No empty chair. No extra place setting. Someone was already sitting in what had traditionally been my spot, my sister's boyfriend, the one who'd been dating her for exactly 3 months. "What kind of misunderstanding?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand perfectly. "This is a family dinner, Maya. Family only." The words hit me like a physical blow. "I am family?" "No," he said, and his voice carried the kind of finality that suggested this wasn't a spontaneous decision. "You're not. Not anymore." "What are you talking about?" "What does that even mean?" "It means you need to leave. We don't want you here." I looked past him again, desperately searching for some sign that this was a mistake, a prank, anything other than what it appeared to be. My mother was visible in the kitchen, clearly aware of what was happening at the front door. She glanced over once, made eye contact with me, then deliberately turned away. "I was invited," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "My cousin called me. She shouldn't have done that." This was discussed. The decision was made. What decision? Who discussed what? The family discussed it. "You cause problems, Maya. You make people uncomfortable. It's better this way." I felt like I was falling, like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. I cause problems? I'm the one who's always helping everyone, always showing up, always making people feel guilty with that martyr act, he interrupted. Always making everything about you and how hard you try and how unappreciated you are. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Not just the words, but the calculation behind them. This hadn't happened in the heat of an argument. This was planned, discussed, decided upon. They'd deliberately waited until I was standing on the doorstep to deliver the blow. "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious." "Go home, Maya. Find somewhere else to spend your holiday." Through the window, I could see my sister laugh at something someone said. My cousin, the one who'd begged me to come, was staring at her phone, refusing to look toward the door. The whole scene had a surreal quality, like I was watching a play about my own life. "Close the door, please," I heard my uncle say to someone behind him, and then it closed. The sound of the deadbolt sliding into place was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I stood there for a moment, wine bottle still in my hand, unable to process what had just happened. Then I turned around, walked back to my car, and sat in the driver's seat staring at the house where my family was having Thanksgiving dinner without me. That's when I realized I wasn't surprised. Hurt, devastated, angry, yes, but not surprised. Some part of me had always known this moment was coming. I drove home in a daze, but by the time I pulled into my apartment complex, something had shifted inside me. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder and more focused. They thought they'd ambushed me, but they had no idea I'd been preparing for this moment for months. You see, I'd started recording our family interactions back in August. Not with any malicious intent initially. I'd begun therapy that summer, and my therapist had suggested I keep a journal of family interactions to help identify patterns. But when I mentioned how often I felt gaslit after family gatherings, how I'd leave questioning my own memory of events, she'd suggested something more concrete. "Sometimes having an objective record helps," she'd said. "It's hard to argue with audio." So I'd started using the voice memo app on my phone during family gatherings, just dropping it casually in my purse, hitting record before walking into rooms where family was gathered. Initially, I thought I'd catch evidence of how helpful I was, how much I contributed. Instead, I caught something else entirely. I caught my mother telling my sister that I was exhausting to deal with, while I was literally in the next room making her dinner. I caught my uncle complaining about how I always needed to be the center of attention during a conversation that happened while I was washing his dishes. I caught my sister laughing about how I tried too hard with gift giving, mocking the thoughtfulness I'd put into choosing presents for them. The most devastating recording was from my cousin's birthday party in October. While I was outside loading leftover cake into my car for an elderly neighbor who couldn't attend, my family had a 15-minute conversation about how Maya always makes everything about herself and how exhausting it was to deal with my neediness. By November, I had nearly 2 hours of audio footage of my family discussing me like I was a burden they were all forced to bear. Me, the person who dropped everything to help them, who never said no to their requests, who bent over backward trying to prove I deserved their love. After they closed the door in my face on Thanksgiving, I went home and spent 3 hours editing those recordings into a 5-minute compilation. The most revealing moments, the clearest examples of their duplicity. My mother's voice saying I was too much work while I organized her entire kitchen. My uncle calling me pathetic while I fixed his broken fence. My sister joking about how I probably think we actually appreciate all that crap she does. I saved the file with a simple title, "What They Really Think." Then I opened my contacts and selected 12 people. My father, who'd stayed distant from family drama but needed to know what his ex-wife was saying about his daughter. My maternal grandmother, who always asked why I looked so tired after family gatherings. A few aunts and uncles from my mother's side who'd always been kind to me but might not know the full story. My cousin who'd invited me to dinner because she deserved to know the truth about what her request had cost me. I attached the audio file to a group message and typed, "Since I was told today that I'm no longer family and was barred from Thanksgiving dinner, I thought you should know what your family members really think about the person who's been showing up for all of you for years. This is 5 minutes of recordings from the past 3 months. There's much more where this came from. My finger hovered over the send button for almost 10 minutes. Once I sent this, there would be no going back. No more pretending, no more hoping things would change, no more accepting crumbs and calling them love. But as I sat there in my quiet apartment, thinking about the sound of that door closing, thinking about my sister's boyfriend sitting in my chair while I was turned away like a stranger, something crystallized inside me. They'd made their choice about who I was to them. Now it was time for everyone else to see what that choice really looked like. I hit send. Then I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and made myself a Thanksgiving dinner for one. The first honest meal I'd had with family, or without them, in years. I kept my phone off for exactly 18 hours. When I finally turned it back on Friday morning, I had 67 missed calls and over 100 text messages. The phone immediately started ringing again, my uncle's number flashing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail and started scrolling through the messages instead. The responses fell into 3 distinct categories: confused questions from people who hadn't listened to the audio yet, supportive messages from those who had, and increasingly frantic damage control attempts from my mother and uncle. My grandmother had been the first to respond, just 2 hours after I'd sent the message. "Honey, I listened to your recording. I had no idea they talked about you this way. This is heartbreaking. Call me when you're ready." My father, who I rarely heard from: "I'm disgusted. Your mother and I need to have a conversation. Are you okay?" But the real revelation was in the messages from extended family members, cousins, aunts, uncles I rarely saw except at major holidays. One by one, they were sharing their own experiences. "Maya, this explains so much. I always wondered why you looked so sad at family gatherings," from my aunt who lived in Oregon. "They've been talking about me the same way for years. I just never had proof," from a cousin I barely knew. "Your mother tried to call me 3 times last night, demanding I delete the message without listening to it. That told me everything I needed to know," from my great uncle. The desperate messages from my mother and uncle painted a clear picture of panic. They'd gone from angry denials to attempts at explanation to outright begging within the span of a few hours. "Uncle, that recording was taken out of context. You're destroying this family over a misunderstanding." "Mother, I can't believe you would secretly record private conversations. This is a betrayal of the worst kind." Then, as more people listened and responded with their own stories of witnessing the family's treatment of me, the messages from my mother became increasingly unhinged. "You've poisoned everyone against me with your lies and manipulation. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me. You're not my daughter anymore. You never deserved this family." That last message actually made me laugh out loud. I'd already been told I wasn't family anymore, by my uncle, with her silent approval. She was just catching up to her own decision. The most important message came from my young cousin around noon. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Mom and Uncle talked about you like that when you weren't around. I feel sick. I never should have asked you to come yesterday. I'm leaving Uncle's house right now. Can I come see you?" She showed up at my apartment an hour later, crying before I even opened the door fully. We sat on my couch while she apologized over and over for unwittingly setting me up for yesterday's humiliation. "I really thought they just forgot to invite you properly," she said. "I had no idea they planned to do that to you. It's not your fault," I told her, and meant it. "You were the only person who wanted me there. I still want you. This whole family is insane without you. Do you know what happened after you sent that recording?" I shook my head. People started leaving. Uncle's house cleared out by 8 p.m. Grandma called Mom and Uncle and told them she was ashamed to be related to them. Dad called Mom and screamed at her for 20 minutes. Everyone's taking sides, and honestly, most people are taking yours. As she talked, my phone kept buzzing with new messages. More family members asking for the full recordings. More people sharing their own stories of how my mother and uncle had talked about them behind their backs. More cracks appearing in the perfect family facade they'd worked so hard to maintain. I realized something profound sitting there with my cousin. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't trying to manage other people's emotions or fix other people's problems. I wasn't rushing to apologize or smooth things over or take responsibility for everyone else's feelings. I had simply told the truth and let everyone else figure out what to do with it. By Saturday, my family's carefully constructed social media presence was crumbling in real time. My mother, who prided herself on her curated image of family perfection, made the catastrophic decision to post on social media about what she called the betrayal of a troubled family member. Her post was a masterclass in victim manipulation. Sometimes loving someone means accepting that they're not healthy enough to be part of your life. It breaks my heart to share that we had to make the difficult decision to ask my daughter to leave our family gathering after years of increasingly concerning behavior. I'm sharing this because I know some of you received disturbing messages from her, and I want you to know that we're getting her the help she needs. Please keep our family in your prayers during this difficult time. The post backfired spectacularly. Within hours, family members were commenting with their own experiences. My grandmother was the first. The only concerning behavior I've witnessed is how you've treated that girl for years. She's been nothing but devoted to this family, and you've repaid her kindness with cruelty. My father, who rarely engaged with social media, created an account specifically to respond. I've listened to the audio Maya shared. Anyone who wants to understand the real story should listen to it too. What I heard was a young woman being systematically emotionally abused by people who should have been protecting her. The comments section became a battlefield. Extended family members, family friends, even neighbors weighed in with their observations of family dynamics over the years. People shared stories of witnessing my mother's cutting remarks, my uncle's dismissive treatment, the way I was consistently overlooked and undervalued. I always wondered why Maya looked so exhausted at family parties, wrote a family friend. Now I understand she was working the entire time while being treated like an unwelcome guest. Maya was the only one who visited my mom when she was in the hospital last year, another cousin added. Where was everyone else? The most devastating comment came from my elderly neighbor, who I'd been helping with groceries and yard work for 3 years. Maya brings me leftover food from family gatherings because she says there's always too much. Now I realize she was probably bringing me her own portion because she wasn't really welcome to eat with them. My phone became unusable from the constant notifications. Messages of support poured in from people I hadn't spoken to in years, high school friends who'd met my family, college roommates who'd witnessed phone calls, co-workers who'd heard me make excuses for why I couldn't attend their events because I was helping family. The pattern they painted was devastating and consistent. Years of me prioritizing family obligations over my own life, relationships, and opportunities, while being treated as an afterthought by the very people I kept sacrificing for. My therapist had an emergency session with me on Saturday evening. Maya, I need you to understand something, she said after I'd filled her in on the past few days. What you're experiencing right now, this validation, this support, this is what normal families do when one member is being mistreated. They rally around the victim, not the abusers. It feels surreal, I admitted. I spent so many years thinking I was the problem. That's what emotional abuse does. It makes you question your own reality, your own worth, your own memories. But look at what happened the moment you provided objective evidence of how you were being treated. People immediately recognized it as wrong. That evening, my cousin texted me screenshots from a group chat I wasn't part of. A conversation between my mother, sister, and uncle trying to coordinate their response to the public relations disaster they'd created. We need to control the narrative, my mother had written. Maya has always been unstable. People need to understand that we were protecting ourselves. Maybe we should just apologize and try to smooth things over, my sister had suggested. Absolutely not, my uncle had responded. Apologizing admits wrongdoing. We stick to the story that Maya is troubled and we made a difficult but necessary decision. Reading their cold calculation while dozens of people were publicly defending me was like watching the final pieces of a puzzle fall into place. They weren't sorry about how they'd treated me. They were sorry they'd been caught. Sunday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was still in my pajamas, nursing my second cup of coffee and reading through more supportive messages, when there was a soft knock at my door. Through the peephole, I saw my father standing awkwardly on my doorstep, holding what looked like a bag of groceries. I hadn't seen him in person in over a year. After my parents' messy divorce when I was 16, he'd maintained a careful distance from anything involving my mother's side of the family. He paid child support, remembered my birthday, and occasionally took me to dinner, but family drama was strictly off-limits. Dad? I opened the door, confused. What are you doing here? I brought breakfast, he said, lifting the bag. Figured you might not have been eating much the past few days. I let him in, still processing his presence. He looked older than I remembered, more tired, but there was something different in his expression, a kind of determined sadness I'd never seen before. He unpacked the bag on my kitchen counter. Bagels, cream cheese, orange juice, fresh fruit. The kind of simple, thoughtful gesture that my mother would have complicated with criticism about my eating habits or unsolicited advice about my lifestyle choices. I listened to the recordings. he said without preamble as he poured orange juice into 2 glasses. All of them. The full versions your cousin sent me. I felt my cheeks burn. Dad, I wasn't trying to drag you into… Maya. His voice was firm but gentle. I need to apologize to you, and I need you to let me do it without making excuses for me. Okay? I nodded, not trusting my voice. I knew, he said simply. Maybe not the specifics, but I knew your mother treated you differently than your sister. I knew you were always the one expected to help, expected to give, expected to accommodate everyone else's needs. And I said nothing because it was easier for me to stay out of it than to fight battles I thought I couldn't win. He sat down across from me at my small kitchen table, his hands wrapped around his coffee mug like he was trying to warm himself. After the divorce, I told myself I was protecting you by staying neutral. But there's no such thing as neutral when someone you love is being hurt. Silence is a choice, and I chose wrong. You couldn't have known it was this bad, I said automatically, falling back into my old pattern of managing other people's guilt. Yes, I could have. I should have. Every time you canceled plans with me because your mother needed help with something. Every time you looked exhausted when I picked you up for dinner. Every time you apologized for things that weren't your fault. Those were signs I chose to ignore. He reached across the table and took my hand. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Terrified for you, worried about the fallout, but proud. It took courage I'm not sure I would have had. We ate breakfast mostly in silence, but it was comfortable in a way I'd forgotten was possible with family. No undercurrents of criticism, no walking on eggshells, no performing gratitude for basic kindness. What happens now? I asked finally. Now I do what I should have done years ago. I support my daughter. Your mother called me Friday night, screaming about how you'd destroyed the family and demanding I talk sense into you. I told her the only person who destroyed this family was her. How did she react to that? About as well as you'd expect. But Maya, I need you to understand something. This isn't your fault, and it's not your responsibility to fix. Your mother made choices about how to treat you, and now she's dealing with the consequences of those choices. That's how life works for adults. After he left, I sat in my quiet apartment feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Unconditional support from a parent. Not support contingent on my behavior, my usefulness, or my willingness to accept mistreatment. Just support because I was his daughter and he loved me. That afternoon, he sent me a text. I'm taking your grandmother to lunch tomorrow. She wants to make sure you know you have family who actually values you. Would you like to join us? For the first time since Thursday, I smiled without forcing it. Maybe I was losing the family I'd been born into, but I was finding the family I deserved. December arrived with a series of phone calls I'd been anticipating, but my family clearly hadn't. The first came on December 3rd, my uncle's panicked voice on my answering machine. Maya, we need to talk. There's been some kind of mistake with the property tax payment on the rental house. The county says it's overdue, but I thought you were handling that. Call me back. I deleted the message without responding. He could figure out his own property taxes. For 3 years, I'd been quietly managing financial obligations for various family members. It had started small. My mother mentioning she was behind on her car payment after an expensive dental procedure, my uncle needing help covering property taxes on his rental property during a slow period for his contracting business. I'd stepped in because that's what family does, right? Except temporary help had become permanent dependence, and loans had become gifts that were never acknowledged, let alone repaid. I had spreadsheets tracking it all. $28,000 over 3 years. Money that came out of my savings, my retirement contributions, my plans for the future. The property tax situation was particularly galling. My uncle owned 3 rental properties, but somehow never managed to save for the annual tax bills. For 2 years running, I'd received frantic calls in November about impending tax sales, and I'd quietly transferred $4,000 each time to keep his properties from being seized. In return, I got to hear him complain at family gatherings about entitled millennials who don't understand hard work. My mother's situation was more complex. After the divorce, she'd struggled financially but refused to downsize from the house she couldn't afford. Rather than face reality, she'd learned to call me whenever bills became overwhelming. Her car payment, her credit card minimums, her homeowner's insurance. I'd become her unofficial financial safety net, all while listening to her criticize my lack of financial responsibility because I rented an apartment instead of buying a house. My sister's needs were the most infuriating because they were purely lifestyle maintenance. When her washing machine broke, she called me instead of her boyfriend because you're so good with money stuff. When she wanted to take a vacation but had already maxed out her credit cards, she asked for a small loan that we both knew would never be repaid. The beauty of it all was how invisible I'd made myself in the process. I paid bills directly to companies, transferred money without fanfare, never kept receipts of their gratitude because there weren't any. I'd become their anonymous benefactor while simultaneously being treated as their ungrateful family burden. Now, as December progressed, the bills were coming due without their secret sponsor. My uncle called 6 more times about various oversights and confusion with bills he'd assumed I was handling. My mother left increasingly desperate voicemails about a credit card company that was suddenly demanding payment on a balance I'd been covering monthly for 8 months. The most telling response came from my sister, who texted, "Mom says you're not paying her car anymore? That's so petty. You know she can't afford it right now." I responded with a single message. "I was told I'm not family anymore. Non-family members don't typically pay each other's bills." She didn't text back. By December 15th, I'd received 43 calls and messages about various financial emergencies, all of them bills and obligations I'd been silently covering while being treated like an unwanted burden. The irony was almost poetic. The family member who caused problems and made everyone uncomfortable had been financially supporting half of them for years. I calculated the numbers one final time. If I stopped covering their various obligations, I'd save over $900 a month. Money I could use for my own life, my own goals, my own future. Concepts that felt revolutionary after years of funding their comfort while being told I wasn't grateful enough for their reluctant acceptance. The best part was their complete shock at the consequences of their own actions. They'd expelled me from the family without considering that families help each other financially, that cutting someone off goes both ways. I was no longer their daughter, their niece, their sister, which meant I was no longer their ATM either. Christmas morning was quiet in a way I'd never experienced. No 6 a.m. phone calls asking me to help with last-minute preparations, no rushing across town to assist with cooking disasters, no arriving early to set up decorations only to be ignored once guests arrived. Instead, I woke up naturally at 9 a.m. in my own bed, made coffee in my peaceful kitchen, and opened a thoughtful gift from my father. A beautiful leather journal with a note that said, "For writing your own story from now on." My grandmother had invited me to Christmas dinner at her assisted living facility. It was small, intimate, and genuine in ways family gatherings had never been. Just me, her, my father, and 2 other residents who didn't have family nearby. We ate cafeteria food and played card games and laughed at my grandmother's stories about Christmas celebrations from decades past. "This is what family should feel like," my grandmother said as we shared dessert. "Comfortable. No walking on eggshells. No performing for approval, just being together because we want to be." Meanwhile, my phone buzzed occasionally with updates from the family I'd left behind. My cousin sent me screenshots from the group chat describing their Christmas disaster. Without me there to manage logistics, coordinate timing, or smooth over conflicts, their traditional gathering had devolved into chaos. My mother had burned the turkey because she'd never actually cooked the whole meal herself. I'd been doing most of the work for years while she took credit. My uncle had gotten drunk and argumentative without me there to redirect conversations and manage his moods. My sister's boyfriend had asked uncomfortable questions about why I wasn't there, leading to an awkward explanation that satisfied no one. "They argued about you for 2 hours, my cousin texted. "Mom kept saying you were ruining Christmas from a distance, and Uncle kept insisting they'd made the right choice. Meanwhile, the dinner was falling apart because nobody knew how you usually organized everything." The most revealing message came from my sister. "Can you just come over later? This is weird without you here. Mom's being impossible, and I don't know how to deal with her when you're not around to handle her moods." I stared at that message for a long time. Even in exile, I was expected to manage their emotional chaos. Even after being told I wasn't family, they wanted me to resume my role as the family's unpaid emotional labor coordinator. I didn't respond. Instead, I spent the afternoon writing in my new journal, processing the year that had changed everything. I wrote about the revelation that being needed and being wanted were different things, about learning to distinguish between love and manipulation, about the strange freedom that came with accepting rejection from people who had never truly accepted me in the first place. That evening, my father called to check on me. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay. I'm peaceful." "Good. That's what you deserve." "Dad, can I ask you something? Do you think I made the right choice? Sending those recordings, I mean?" "Maya, I think you finally stopped setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. That's never the wrong choice." As December wound down, the pattern became clear. My family's Christmas plans, New Year's preparations, and holiday social obligations were falling apart without my invisible support system. Phone calls became more desperate. messages more manipulative, attempts to guilt me back into compliance more transparent. But for the first time in my adult life, their chaos wasn't my emergency. Their poor planning wasn't my responsibility to fix. Their emotional meltdowns weren't my job to manage. I spent New Year's Eve with new friends. People I'd met through a hiking group I'd joined after realizing I had every weekend free, now that I wasn't constantly available for family obligations. We watched fireworks and made resolutions and talked about our hopes for the coming year. At midnight, as everyone around me celebrated new beginnings, I felt something I'd never experienced before: excitement about my own future. Not anxiety about how to make others happy, or fear about whether I was doing enough to earn love, just genuine anticipation for what came next. For the first time in my life, I was the main character in my own story. January brought consequences I hadn't anticipated. The family fractures I'd exposed continued to spread, creating new alliances and revealing old resentments that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. My grandmother, emboldened by the support she'd seen for me, began sharing her own stories about my mother's behavior. Apparently, my mother's pattern of emotional manipulation extended far beyond her treatment of me. My grandmother revealed years of criticism disguised as concern, financial pressure, and attempts to control her social relationships. I never said anything because I thought it was just how families worked, she told me during one of our weekly coffee dates, a new tradition we'd started. But watching how people responded to your situation made me realize it wasn't normal. It wasn't okay. Other family members began reaching out with their own stories. An aunt I barely knew called to tell me about how my mother had systematically excluded her from family events after a minor disagreement 5 years ago. A cousin shared how my uncle had spread rumors about his business to undermine a construction contract, forcing him to leave town to find work. The most shocking revelation came from my father's sister, who'd been estranged from the family since my parents' divorce. She sent me a long email explaining why she'd disappeared. My mother had told everyone that she was jealous of our perfect family and had been spreading lies about our marriage. In reality, she'd tried to warn my father about my mother's affair months before he discovered it himself. "I watched your mother destroy relationships for years," she wrote. "She can't tolerate anyone who threatens her control of the narrative. What she did to you was just the latest in a long pattern." These revelations created a clear division in our extended family. On one side were the people who'd witnessed or experienced my mother and uncle's manipulative behavior and were finally free to speak about it. On the other side were the family members who either benefited from the current power structure or were too afraid of conflict to take sides. My sister found herself in an impossible position. She'd built her identity around being the favored child, the successful one, the family golden child. With that dynamic exposed as artificial and cruel, she was forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about her own complicity. She sent me a letter in February, an actual handwritten letter, not a text or email. In it, she admitted that she'd known I was being treated unfairly, but had been afraid to speak up because she didn't want to lose her privileged position. "I was selfish," she wrote. "I let you take all the criticism and carry all the responsibility because it made my life easier. I told myself that you were stronger than me, that you didn't mind helping, that it was just your personality. But I knew better. I've always known better." The letter was a start, but it wasn't enough to repair years of damage. Acknowledgement of wrongdoing isn't the same as amends, and I wasn't ready to resume a relationship based on her convenience. My mother's response to the family upheaval was predictably dramatic. She sent me a certified letter in March threatening legal action for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The letter, written by what was clearly a bargain basement lawyer, demanded I retract all false statements and cease and desist from further harassment of family members. I showed the letter to my father, who laughed out loud. "She's threatening to sue you for playing recordings of her own words? Good luck with that defense." The legal threat backfired spectacularly. Several family members who'd been staying neutral decided that threatening lawsuits against your own daughter for exposing emotional abuse was a line too far. My mother's support network shrank to just my uncle and a couple of his drinking buddies. More importantly, the threat crystallized something for me. My mother wasn't sorry about how she'd treated me. She wasn't embarrassed by her behavior. She was angry that I'd exposed it. Even faced with overwhelming evidence of her cruelty, her primary concern was controlling the narrative and avoiding accountability. The letter made it clear that reconciliation was impossible, not because I was unwilling to forgive, but because she was unwilling to acknowledge there was anything to forgive. By spring, 2 distinct family networks had emerged. The old guard, my mother, uncle, and their few remaining allies, continued their pattern of gossip, manipulation, and emotional warfare. The rest of us, grandmother, father, several aunts and cousins, and extended family members, began building relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation and fear. I finally understood what healthy family relationships looked like, and why I'd felt so exhausted for so many years. I'd been trying to force genuine connection with people who were fundamentally incapable of it, while neglecting the family members who'd been waiting all along to love me without conditions. A year later, I barely recognized the person I used to be. The woman who drove to that Thanksgiving dinner expecting crumbs and calling them love seems like a stranger to me now. I'm writing this from my new apartment, a bright, airy place that I chose because I loved it, not because it was convenient for helping family members with their various needs. The walls are decorated with photos of hiking trips, dinner parties with genuine friends, and quiet moments of contentment that I never thought I'd experience. The journal my father gave me last Christmas is filled with entries chronicling this transformation. Pages about learning to say no without guilt, about discovering what I actually enjoyed when I wasn't constantly managing other people's emotions, about the strange luxury of having weekends free to pursue my own interests. I've started writing professionally, freelance articles about family dynamics, emotional abuse, and the journey to self-worth. My first published piece, The Invisible Family Member, resonated with thousands of readers who recognized their own experiences in my story. The response was overwhelming. Emails from people who'd lived similar lives, thank you notes from others who found the courage to set their own boundaries, messages from therapists who shared the article with clients struggling with toxic families. My dating life has transformed too. When you stop accepting crumbs from family, you become unable to accept them from romantic partners. I'm seeing someone now, a kind, emotionally available person who treats me with the respect I thought was reserved for other people. He's never met my mother or uncle, and he never will. Some boundaries are non-negotiable. Let me tell you what happened to each person in this story because closure matters. My mother continues living in her too expensive house, but now she pays her own bills. She's had to downsize her lifestyle significantly and frequently posts on social media about the ungrateful children who abandon their families. She has very few friends left. Most people grew tired of her constant victim narrative and need for drama. My uncle lost one of his rental properties to tax foreclosure and had to sell another to pay debts. His drinking got worse after losing his free financial support system, and he's become increasingly isolated. He still insists he did nothing wrong, but his own children barely speak to him anymore. My sister moved across the country for a job opportunity, but I suspect she was also fleeing the wreckage of our family's reputation in town. She sends me birthday cards now with generic messages about hoping we can reconnect someday. I appreciate the gesture, but trust is earned, not inherited. My cousin, the one who invited me to that fateful dinner, is thriving. She moved in with my grandmother after graduating college, and they've become each other's chosen family. She visits me regularly, and we've built the kind of relationship I always wanted with a sister. My father and I have weekly dinners now. He's dating someone nice who treats me like a daughter from the start, not someone who has to earn acceptance. He's more involved in my life than he's ever been, and he frequently apologizes for the years he stayed silent. I've forgiven him because he did the work to change. My grandmother is my hero. At 83, she decided she was too old to waste time on fake family harmony. She speaks her mind now, stands up for people being mistreated, and has become a fierce advocate for authenticity in relationships. She's the matriarch our family needed all along. As for me, I'm finally living my own life instead of servicing everyone else's. I have hobbies, goals, dreams that belong to me alone. I've learned that being alone is better than being with people who make you feel lonely. I've discovered that saying no to the wrong people creates space for the right ones to find you. The most unexpected gift of this whole experience was discovering that I'm actually quite likable when I'm not desperately trying to prove my worth. When you stop performing for acceptance, you attract people who accept you as you are. Sometimes people ask if I regret sending those recordings, if I wish I'd tried to work things out differently. The answer is always no. That Thanksgiving dinner, humiliating as it was, gave me the gift of absolute clarity. There's immense power in stop pretending that cruelty is love, that obligation is affection, that being needed is the same as being valued. I grieved the family I thought I had, then celebrated the family I actually deserved. Some of them had been there all along, just waiting for me to stop chasing people who were never going to choose me back. Today, I choose myself. Every single day, I choose myself. And for the first time in my life, that feels like enough.